very, very big and warm welcome to everyone. These webinars are meant to provide practical advice around managing people, and our focus today is around what we're going to call the management gap, and we'll call it more particularly the capability gap, and the 5 capabilities your managers need in uncertain times. Look, Lauren, one thing we've really noticed with business owners and leaders and managers alike across Australia, and particularly where our clients are based, is the challenges that we're seeing right now in relation to managing in uncertain times are not people problems particularly, but they're capability problems. Being able to actually keep pace with the change that's going on right now and being able to competently and confidently deal with uncertainty. And we want to focus on managers because we're strongly committed to building manager capability across Australia, one practical step at a time. That's what we're here to talk about. And, just in terms of numbers, Lauren, I did a bit of a quick research earlier on just how many people have manager or supervisor roles in small and medium businesses across Australia. And would you believe the number comes up around 1.5 million? And that was cross-checked against Job Skills Australia report. So that's a big chunk of the workforce of Australia who are no doubt feeling the pressure right now for various reasons. So we want to talk about that today because if we can share with you what we think are the 5 capabilities that managers need, then we can also give you some advice and some practical ideas, then you can actually help support this very important group of people, of whom some on the call today are right in that position right now. So it's all about managers today. Let's see if we can make sure that we're equipping and setting our managers up for success so that if you're leading a business, you can rely on the people in those management roles to be able to be supporting you and supporting their teams at the same time. That's why we're here. Just a little about us as a business here. Our purpose and everything we do is built around one simple belief, and that's people and business thriving together. And we do that through our mission and our points of difference there. You can see around our business focus, our strategic partnership, and working with our clients as trusted people advisors. And what we know is that when people capability keeps pace with business growth, then leaders are going to spend less time firefighting and more time leading. And that's really what we're trying to deliver. The team who work with us, Lauren, there's you and I on the left, but we also have Shelley Harris, Lisa Wright, Mark Parry, and in the background today, although she's not on the pictures there, we have Bettina who's helping us with the technology today. Thanks, Bettina. Thanks for joining us as well and for being a part of our team. So collectively, we are an experienced team. And we've worked with hundreds of managers and leadership teams across particularly small to medium businesses. And we can see the challenges that we're going to be talking about today are things that we've worked on consistently, regardless of whatever industry you might be working in. So here's what we're going to cover today. Why capable people struggle? What is it about the current environment that's making it difficult for managers? And then what are the things that are breaking down in those management teams? And then we'll flip it around and talk about what equipped management actually looks like. And talk then about a program that we've built to develop those skills and some key takeaways, next steps, and we'll finish off with the Q&A. So it's a 45-minute session today. We'll try and leave about 10 minutes for Q&A at the end. But it's not about management theory. That's really what I want to say today. It's about practical stuff that we see happening in real businesses every day, and then what we've done to help our clients address those challenges, particularly with this management cohort. So what resonates most with you right now? You can see there a number of things that are going on in most businesses right now. Revenue's under pressure. Maybe you're carrying too much as a leader. Maybe you're seeing gaps in your management capability across the team, or maybe you're struggling to find or keep the right people in your business. And the final one, which I'm sure we're all relating to right now, we're all being busy, but maybe we're not making the progress we need to be making right now, particularly as things are shifting and changing around us. So the question for you is, which of those resonates most with you right now? Just ponder that for a moment.
That last one, I think, is something, the conversations that I've been having, been quite a few conversations over the last week and a half, and that's probably one of the big ones. People feeling a bit like they're not treading water, that they're making small progress, but just not enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So understandable, Lauren, isn't it? Because of the changes, the disruptions that have been going on over the last few months, well, essentially
Mm.
since the beginning of this year. We won't go into all of those. We know what they are, but essentially they're disruptions, they're distractions. We're having to respond and react at the same time, trying to keep the wheels turning in the business and position the business for a turnaround when that comes and when some of these issues get resolved. So we can be busy, but maybe we're not making the progress that we want to be making. So that can be impacting on us right now. And what that means is that's impacting on our managers as well. Or if you are one, you're feeling this too. So why do people struggle? Well, most managers, and we're talking managers here, they're not struggling because they're not committed, Lauren. They're struggling because everything around them has become so complex. The demands are changing daily. And perhaps, there's no roadmap for this. There's no book of rules that says, how do I manage when things are changing so frequently and I'm dealing with uncertainty at the same time? When we talk about uncertainty and business conditions there, you probably read quite a few statistics lately, particularly in response to the current budget that's just been put forward, that 40% of Australian business and industry leaders expect 2026 business conditions to be weaker than 2025. And we probably saw yesterday the Reserve Bank's announcement they're holding interest rates for the moment. And that's because their outlook for growth in the economy at the moment is starting to look a bit dimmer than what it was before. So we have this environment that we're looking at going forward, which is weaker business conditions potentially, and having to deal with that at the same time as trying to find a way forward for our own business. So managers aren't failing. Managers just feeling the pressure because, well, the skills that probably got them into the job are not necessarily the ones that are going to help them deal with the role as it now is. And that comes because, probably if you're a manager, you might have got promoted on the fact that you had done a good job in the past. Lauren, I was one of these. Like I became a
Yeah.
manager when I was 21. I was given 8 people to manage with no instruction manual.
Yeah.
And I can remember it now, the words from my boss at the time. He said, Warren, if you're going to succeed in this business, you need to learn how to manage people. Good luck.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the crazy thing. Yeah. I've
That
seen
is
it
the
so
quote.
many times in my career. I've shared examples on past webinars and
Yeah.
articles and things like that too. That it's just common because they're good. That's the thing. They are very capable of their technical skills and the things that they know, but we're not equipping them. Yeah.
And not feeling equipped as well. So, there's 82% of managers are promoted based on their technical skills or the fact that they did a good job in their role previously, but not because they've necessarily been prepared for leading a team. The other interesting figure here too is about the impact of managers on team engagement. So if you talk about culture and you talk about, the well-being of an organization, a very big chunk of that, 70% of that is determined by the impact of the manager. The manager has a big influence on how people feel about their role and whether they're enjoying and willing to stay in a business for a long period of time. So that's a very, very big figure, 70%. So we've got placing a lot of expectation on a manager because of the impact that they have on their team, overall engagement. But look at that last point. Actual engagement of managers themselves is down 9 points since 2022. And I think you actually came up with a figure the other day, didn't you, Lauren?
I did because I was like, what does that actually mean? And I dug into this. This all came out of the Gallup data. And essentially, what it's meaning last year's figure, so 2025, we don't have the current year figure, only halfway through, is that manager engagement is actually only 22%. So that 9 points down
Wow.
since 2022 over 3 years has dropped. It's now 22%. So I did
Mm,
the further
mm,
maths on that as well. If you've got only 22% of managers are actually engaged, and then 70% of those team engagement is determined by the manager, it's like 1 in 15, basically, of employees is actively being engaged by or encouraged and engaged by an engaged manager.
mm,
It's
mm.
pretty staggering. Yeah.
It's pretty staggering. And look, we can all probably think of managers who've had a positive impact on us and how that caused us to perform better. We can probably also reflect on managers who had the opposite effect on us. Right? Maybe we left jobs because of them.
And that just even though it is 22%, it doesn't mean that the other 78, is that right? 78%. I'm not great at maths on the fly, but the
You're
other
right.
flip side of
78.
that is that the managers are, actively disengaged. It just means that managers are in a really tough spot right now. They're in a really tough
Yeah.
spot.
And we have a lot of empathy for that. We've been managers ourselves. but B, we work very closely with managers in our clients' organisations as well, both from a training and a coaching perspective. So we feel that situation. We want to do something about it because we know managers are feeling the pressure. And if you're a business owner or a leader and you've got managers working for you, you can probably see what's going on here in this dynamic. You're, as a leader, navigating change, maybe having to make some rapid decisions based on what's going on in the environment that you're facing, set new directions for the business. And then you've got your teams, the body of people who work for you. They're looking for clarity. They need direction about what to do next. And guess who's in the middle? It's the manager. The manager has to implement the plans, manage the priorities. And without the rule book, 100% clarity or certainty about where we're all heading, that can impose a pressure on a manager who really needs some help to be guided through this and to be able to feel confident to be able to deal with that role, knowing that there isn't necessarily a guaranteed answer for anything at the moment. All we need to do is follow the plan and make sure that our people are engaged and come along with us. So managers are feeling the pressure. Where is it the pressure is showing up? That's what we wanted to focus here on, because these are what we're calling the capability gaps, okay? The 5 things, the 5 areas where we need to focus our attention to help managers deal with their role better so that the business can also cope better as well. So what are the 5 gaps? Well, number 1 is communication. Now, this seems very obvious, isn't it? But when the going gets tough, quite often communication breaks down. And so if you're a manager and you're needing to provide clarity and direction to your team, how you communicate and the words that you use are going to be really important right now. Now, something interesting, Lauren, I actually was reading in the paper this morning, an article from Swinburne University that said what they were finding now, particularly at this latest cohort coming through their business program, was just the lack of interpersonal communication skills. Very telling, because a lot of people now are coming into uni, have spent a lot of time on social media, talking to people through text messages and Snapchat and what have you. But when they get into a real workplace, they don't necessarily have the skills or the confidence to be able to have these, proper human to human conversations. This is a disturbing fact, isn't it?
Yeah, communication was already strained to begin with. So, yeah.
Already strained to begin with. So they're building that into their syllabus now, actually how to communicate in the workplace, not just sending emails. So communication is obviously a vital skill. Being able to give feedback, manage underperformance, deal with conflict in a productive way, and then also to create an environment of accountability amongst your team. These are fundamentals that managers are not necessarily being prepared for or given any training for when they're coming into a new job. So let's have a look at them just very quickly in a little bit more detail. Lauren, dive in. Thank you.
I love talking about communication. And if you've been on webinars before where we've covered communication, I always talk about this. It's just still mind-boggling, but I get it that it's the number 1 issue that most people face, because this is the struggle that we're all communicating in our own way, in our own styles. To the point you just made, Warren, we're being taught in different ways or not taught. I was discussing with a friend on the weekend about how some families grow up with really good communication skills within the family, and other people don't have that in their families, and communication's not a really big thing. So it's no wonder when you get all of us together in the melting pot known as the workplace that we're going to have some struggles around communication. So we talk about it a lot, and it's because it's one of the most fundamental gaps that we know exist, and not just us at Howardco, but the research that we see out there when we're looking at what managers are struggling with. So the main gaps that we've identified, the assumption that a message sent is a message received. So I've spoken to you, I've told you that, I've delegated this, I've said that, and that you now understand me, right? There's a big difference between the intention of my message and then the way my message is interpreted. We need to make sure that there's a little bit more honing in on what that looks like and how that's, I guess, closing the gap as we're talking about. And then different people hearing things differently. Most managers default to their natural style. So some of you will know that we like talking about DISC and using DISC in our material. And that's one example where we all have our own natural styles, how we communicate, how we like to hear, how we like to say things. And sometimes, if we're not thinking about who we're communicating to, we're going to have those communication challenges. So what's the real cost of the gap? Confusion is a big one. So you've got lots of people thinking, is that what we've agreed to do, or not even what are we doing? What's the plan here? Reworks. How many times have you been involved in that where you've started something and then hang on, we have to completely rework that? I remember talking to a manager of one of our clients once, and she's had a whole team of people off doing their own thing because they thought that that's what they were meant to do. And for weeks on end that they'd been working on something and it just wasn't part of what they'd been asked to do. So sometimes those reworks can involve a lot of time. Unmet expectations. I thought I told you to do that. No, you haven't done it. And then obviously eroded trust is a really big
Mm.
one there as well.
Mm. And Lauren, I think the other thing too we can add there is lack of communication can also be an issue here, and particularly if you're a manager and you're not quite sure, what we're doing next, or you're uncertain, the tendency can be to just shut down or not communicate at all. And that, of course, allows people to make up their own thoughts and ideas about what's going to happen next. So more open communication is required, particularly during times of uncertainty.
Yeah. In the absence of information, people make stuff up. So, yeah. Yeah, let's forward to gap two. This is another really big one is feedback. When we're talking particularly about giving feedback to people, it's one of the most powerful management tools that we have. It's also the one that's the most avoided, and it's the one that a lot of managers genuinely struggle with because no one really teaches them about how to do it, and what it actually means to give feedback. We often talk about feedback in the fact that there's constructive feedback, there's positive feedback, and then there's destructive feedback. So the destructive feedback is the stuff that, is unhelpful, negative, unclear. The constructive feedback is where we need to correct some behavior or we need to correct a task. So something's been done, a mistake was made. How do we correct that so that next time we do it again better? And obviously, positive feedback is about reinforcing positive behavior, positive tasks, recognition, that type of thing. So, feedback's become synonymous with those performance reviews or bad news. I was just having a chat with a client this morning, actually, who said something came up in a performance review and she didn't want to challenge it in that discussion, but then realized, well, actually, I would have been better off addressing it in the moment. So it's probably not such a bad thing that I didn't raise it in the review because it needs to be something that's addressed timely as well. You don't want to be waiting 6 months and then saying, hey, by the way, do you remember when you did that thing back in December? And they're like, huh, what? So, feedback is a really important gap to close out. What is the real cost of poor feedback or not dealing with feedback is that mistakes go uncorrected. Right? If mistakes happen and we don't work towards finding a way to correct them properly and constructively, then you end up, creating a bit of a rod for your own back as a manager. The other one is that wins aren't reinforced. If we're not giving positive feedback, that's something that we hear a lot, isn't it, Warren? Where, people are
Mm.
not really, they're so busy that they're forgetting to do the positive feedback. And then team performance can drift as well. So if we're not really giving feedback and we're just sort of wandering along aimlessly, then are we doing the right thing or not? Was that a good thing or a bad thing? And that's a real risk to the team as well.
Mm. I heard a great quote, Lauren, that said, when feedback disappears, so does improvement.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, we'll get into some solutions, but what can we do to flip the concept of feedback being this thing that's associated with bad news into perhaps it's a coaching tool that we use, or it's a
Mm.
way that we can actually help support people rather than raking them over the coals, which I know some managers feel when they've got "Oh, gosh, someone's done that. I need to fix. I need to talk to them. They've done something wrong." Yeah, just turn it into a supportive thing. Gap number three is about underperformance and, in particular, about managing underperformance. So, the most common strategy with underperformance that we see is about waiting and hoping that it's going to resolve itself. A lot of managers just don't like to deal with poor performance. Now, poor performance, underperformance can relate to not only task performance, but also behavior as well. The behavior one is where it can get really tricky. If someone's not behaving in a way that is sort of in accordance with the business and culture and things like that, it can become or feel a little bit more like it's a personal attack. But it is at the end of the day classified as an underperformance because you've got behavioral standards that you need to uphold. So the reality is, as most of us would know, that sweeping things under the rug never really helps. It doesn't solve the problem. And the longer the wait we deal with it, the bigger the ripple effect across the team. And, perhaps for some of you on the call today or listening to the recording, you'll know when you've been working with someone who's underperforming, you might have had to carry the weight a bit in the team. Sometimes, they're just getting away with it. It can bring up resentment, all those types of things, a little bit of basically a morale can start to drop. And there can be worse consequences as well for organizations too. If you end up with proper, like sort of a severe case of underperformance going unmanaged, other people can end up leaving because they're like, well, this isn't getting any better. I'm out of here. So, it's a bit extreme, but it can happen. So, what's the real cost of underperformance? We've got months of productivity loss by not dealing with it. I did have a case once that just reminded me of a client who ended up taking their employee through underperformance management, and they had known within 6 months of hiring them that they weren't the right fit. And yet this woman had been with the company 3 years before they started the underperformance process. So it does happen. They, spend a lot of lost time there. Obviously we talked about there the damaging of the team culture and then messy exits. Like sometimes it can just get really messy, also difficult exits, and how to deal with it because the fair work implications are pretty strong here when it comes to managing underperformance as well. But if a manager's not equipped in this space, how to spot the signs for it, these are some of the things that can happen.
And you're right, Lauren, not equipped to do it. So therefore something we might choose to avoid, but what we know is the cost of avoiding those conversations can sometimes be greater than actually the cost of having it in the first place.
Yeah. And in most cases, it's just rip the Band-Aid off. Anyway, let's talk about conflict too. And I guess what we're really speaking to today when we're talking about the gap around conflict here is really about managing that unproductive conflict. We would sort of talk about the two kinds of that, the volatile kind that can escalate and get, maybe argy-bargy in the work environment. But there's the other sign here, which is the silent one that festers, the grudges that build up underneath the surface, the things that people have issues with that they're not addressing, right? So if we talked about on the previous slide about, letting things settle under the rug, often managers avoid both of them because nobody's taught them how to navigate either of these. That's not something, again, that we spend a lot of time learning how to deal with conflict, and we tend to pick it up based on our life experiences, how we go about dealing with it. So if we're not addressing conflict, we're not managing that unproductive conflict, we end up with the tension, whether it's seen or unseen. We end up with relationships breaking down, and obviously that in a workplace can further lead to disengagement and worse, people leaving and things like that. So excellent. And our last one here is the one around accountability. Well, this accountability is a big one, Warren, isn't it? And we know that this is one of the things that even high performing teams struggle the most with holding each other accountable. We do know that. For simplicity's sake here, when we're talking about that management squeeze where they're in the middle here and they're under pressure from, top down, and then trying to support their teams underneath them, is really responsibility without authority creates bottlenecks, right? So what we're saying there is if you don't have managers who know how to delegate authority and everything still then needs to come back through the manager to say yes or no, that can just slow down productivity. If people are capable to be able to help make decisions within a framework, then we need to be able to set up systems to be able to do that. And managers who carry all the accountability end up carrying everything. And that's probably part of the reason why we end up seeing stats like 22% of manager engagement in 2025, right? Because it's like, oh, I'm having to do it all. So the real cost of accountability or not knowing how to hold teams accountable, slow decisions, disempowered teams, and burnout at the top, burnout at the management level. Yeah, people just feeling a little bit bewildered with knowing which direction to turn.
And, I was thinking about, even that word accountability or holding people to account sounds like a big stick, doesn't it? So, part of the background to this is that we need to sort of remove that stigma associated with accountability and create ownership, encourage the members of your team to treat accountability as a positive. That's something where we've equipped them with and given them authority and given them the skills and the ability to actually take ownership of the very things that they're responsible for. Because if we don't do that, then it just creates more dependency on the manager. And you as a manager, you've already got enough to do and you're probably being asked to do more. So great points. 5 gaps, Lauren. So let's talk then about what equipped management actually looks like, which is essentially the flip side of what we've just talked about now, because for every one of those gaps, there's a learned capability. There's actually a skill behind each of those that can be learned. So we want to talk about the 5 capabilities now that a manager can develop and grow to be able to deal with the uncertain and challenging environments that we're working in now. So the 5 capabilities. Number 1 is reading the room. Now, when Lauren talked about communication earlier, she was talking about making a connection. When you're not connecting, you're not engaging. Reading the room is the skill of being able to understand the different communication styles and needs of your team, right? Because essentially, as individuals, and I know I fall into this myself, we all prefer to communicate in the way we like to communicate, right? So if I like to tell stories, that's the way I'm going to start my conversation. But that may not be the way that's going to best resonate with my team. So capability number 1, the ability to understand the communication needs and styles of your team, and then being able to adapt so that you can engage, connect, and motivate your team to be able to do the things that you need them to do. So that's number 1. Number 2 is saying the hard thing early. Now, we talked about the unaddressed performance issues, not giving feedback in a timely way. It's about developing the confidence and the capability to be actually address things on the go in a way that's constructive and also leads to a positive outcome and a change. Now, we talk about a model, Lauren, SBI, in the programs that we run, situation, behaviour, impact. And when we introduce that framework to managers that we work with, they really take it on board. And we've had some very positive feedback about how that has actually helped them structure and frame constructive feedback conversations with the people we've worked with, because in the past, they really haven't known where to start.
Yeah, Warren, a quick story on that. I was speaking to a seasoned manager yesterday, several decades of management experience. And I was talking to him about our program and I said, "Oh, what have you taken away from it? Like, what's something that you've gotten personal value out of it?" And he said, the SBI model. He said, that was really good. Yeah. That's how something simple, even after 20 years of management experience.
Yeah, well, that's great feedback, right? Something simple, even after 20 years, just having a framework, something to start working with. Number 3 is staying grounded in conflict. And this is really reframing how you view conflict. Conflict is a necessary part of tension in any organisation. Being able to manage it confidently and productively means that you can actually create outcomes that lead to improvement. So, you can have some vigorous conversations that don't have to turn into conflict. You can see them as a natural part of engaging with different personalities, different points of view. But again, it's about how do I do that? And how do you reframe as a manager your own attitude towards conflict and then turn that around to saying, actually, can we embrace that and find ways of making it productive? Because that's the way you develop stronger trust within teams as well. Number 4 is letting go of the right tasks. I mean, this is getting back down to delegate. If you don't pass things on, if you don't equip the people in your team with the skills and the authority to do the things that you want them to do, then it's all going to come back to you. So you're going to know what to let go of and who to let go of it to, and then how to actually equip your team members with the capability to be actually take on those tasks for you so that you don't have to do it all yourself, as my manager said to me once. And then creating clarity and chaos. Okay. So I think the point here, and it gets back to communication as well, but in order to get people, your people, if you're a manager, in your team, working alongside you and with you, first of all, you have to be honest and saying you don't have all the answers to everything. Right? That's the first thing, creating that level of honesty and trust. And then secondly, provide clarity where you can. While you mightn't be able to give absolutely certainty and guarantees about where things are going in the future, what you can do is have a plan for today and tomorrow and make it clear to everyone in the team what their role is in that plan and how you will adjust as you learn more as you go down the path. All right. And you let the journey be the guide rather than necessarily be dictated by a particular outcome. So find clarity where you can and then use communication to engage and bring your people on board with you. That's a really powerful capability, Lauren. It's one that's very
Yeah.
necessary right now.
Yeah. And it all cycles back through then once you start the communication again. So, yeah.
So it does. Continuing on. So those 5 capabilities are the flip side of the gaps that we talked about earlier. And what we want to talk about now is the program that we have built to develop these skills, a program we've been running now for the last 18 months or more. We're right in the middle of our current cohort, but it is specifically there to address the capability gaps and equip managers with the skills that they need to be able to thrive in uncertain times. Lauren, do you want to talk about the practical manager?
Yeah, the Practical Manager is a program that we developed last year and have been running. Everything is in the name in the sense that it's a program built and designed to give practical management training to managers. I've just been doing a ring around of people that have been going through the program, and the consistent feedback that we're getting from that program, apart from the fact that it is very structured and practical, is that they're loving the real work application, real stories, because they're learning from their peers. That's probably the real strong thing, because as we say, management capability doesn't develop by accident. This is not something that they're just going to wake up one day and all of a sudden feel capable in their roles. We need to be able to train them. So what this is, it's over a sort of roughly 6-month program that we run. We're not interested in looking at a one day, one hit wonder management program. We are working on something that came out, well, actually, we designed it, and then the Future of Learning reinforced it in terms of the way that the Future of Learning is looking at is more of this peer-based learning and stage so that people can learn effectively. So as you can see on the screen now, I won't read them all out, but that's the essential, 6 modules that we cover over a period of time. The most important thing about the Practical Manager is that each of these skills is building on the previous skill, right? So you can't really deliver effective feedback unless you've got some foundational communication skills. And likewise, you can't really manage underperformance with your team, or your managers aren't going to be able to do that if they haven't really learned the process of how to give effective feedback. So everything's sort of built in a staged approach, with the final result being, okay, we've gotten to the 6th module now. How do we help support you with now holding your team more accountable and creating that kind of culture of accountability as well? Anything you would like to add there, Warren?
I'd like to acknowledge that I noticed we've got a couple of people on listening in on the webinar today who are graduates from one of our earlier cohorts as well. So great to have you on board, guys, and for your support. One thing we have known is that by running this program, we are building up quite a strong cohort of managers who we're keeping in touch with, and they're letting us know how they're translating the learnings back
Yeah,
onto the job, which is
yeah.
great, as you said, Lauren, in your ring around earlier.
Yeah, and that's this, and just as it's the little bit that popped up on the screen there, everything's done online. We do it in bite-sized chunks so people aren't getting out of their job. So, we're trying to make it as non-disruptive. I'm not sure of the correct word there. Minimal disruption to the workday so people can continue on with the work that we need. Because again, we're acknowledging that management squeeze, right? They're getting squeezed in the middle of everything. It's really hard to even think about taking time out. We just encouraging 2 hours a month to take some time out to get a bit of training. And then we've got here peer group sessions. And this is the thing that people are getting incredible value from, because Warren and I and our team, we lead these peer group sessions, but we're literally there as facilitators. We're allowing discussion from the group and problems to be solved within the group to support each other. It's the biggest feedback that I've had that people love about the program, is learning from other people and cross industry experience and things like that, which is really wonderful. So potentially from today, there's 2 clear pathways if this is a program that you think would be of either interest to you or your managers, right? So if this is you and you've recognized yourself in those 5 gaps, then we encourage you to consider looking at the program. Perhaps it is for your managers. If you're looking and seeing that your managers are under pressure and would like to offer them some support in being able to help you and help them and their business, then this is also the program for them. So next cohort is kicking off on Wednesday, the 8th of July. And you can obviously scan that code there to learn more. We've got a very informative page there. There's lots of videos. We've got testimonials from our past participants who have said it all. So you can go and find some of that information there from that webpage. Or please reach out to us. It's info@howardco.com.au, but you can also just call Warren or I. Many of you have got our numbers, so we're happy to have a chat to you and see what would suit you best.
Love to, Lauren, and that's starting in the 8th of July, so that's not long from now. Registrations are open and seats are filling. And I'd also like to just add that we do have an end of financial year offer as well, and that's a 15% discount on our normal investment for this program. So if you're lucky enough to grab one of those seats, you'll also get the benefit of the 15% discount as well. So we do welcome it. Our programs do fill and they're popular now. We're in our 3rd cohort. We're going into the 4th one in July as well. So I do encourage you, if you'd like to learn more about it, just contact Lauren or myself. Go to that QR code there. You can see more information and some really nice testimonials from people who've been on the program in the past. I know that always helps when I'm looking at attending something. I like to know what other people are saying about it.
Speaking of, I think we've got a few here, Warren, of
Oh, here we
people
go.
who've said a
Right.
few little things about what's here. You know, after using SBI model, he understands the flow and effects, move forward, one conversation, done. I remember having a chat with Ben about that. So yeah, there's some just really good examples there. And in fact, we've got an article that we've just posted on our LinkedIn page as well that might be worth having a look at. We'll send it out with all of the follow-up, but we'll definitely share that as well.
Indeed. So that is there. And key takeaways. So, quick summary. Management is a skill. It can be taught, practiced, and improved. We know that. Most managers were never taught how to manage. That's a capability gap. It's not a flaw. Every gap has a learnable capability on the other side. We've demonstrated the 5 today. And development works when it happens over time with real application in between. That's the way we've structured the Practical Manager program. And businesses, small and medium businesses in particular, that invest in equipping their managers will outperform the ones that don't. Okay, really important message there.
Well, if you think back to that 1 in 15, it's a worthwhile consideration to do something to support your managers.
So true, Lauren. Big percentage of our workforce, right?
Yeah.
We also, from today, will send out to you what we've called the Management Gap Self-Assessment Checklist. It's an opportunity for you individually to assess your capability or those of others and to identify the gaps and reflect on what needs to change and why. No doubt, from the 5 today, you might have identified 1 or 2 that's an area that you'd like to work on. This assessment checklist will help you identify and narrow those down as well. So that will be coming out to everyone who's been on this webinar or has requested a copy of the recording that's coming through to you. We do have not a lot of time. I did promise 10 minutes. We've only got 1, but we can hang around if you want to. Couple of
A
questions.
couple of quick questions. So Caitlin asked, what time of day are the online sessions? So at the moment, Caitlin, we're running them 12 p.m. till 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which will become Eastern Daylight Savings Time. So basically Melbourne time, 12 till 2. But we're open to feedback about that. We did get some feedback yesterday that we know it seems to work because it covers off over the lunch break. We're trying to minimize people's, time away from work, and that's the majority feedback we've had. But if that doesn't suit, we're open to some feedback as well. So
Great. Thanks for your question, Caitlin. A big shout out to you. Caitlin and I shared a panel at the recent Trucking Australia conference recently. So well done, Caitlin. Good to have you on the webinar today.
yeah, and I had another quick one here from Rod. What if the manager themselves doesn't think they need the development, but the senior manager does? Warren, what would you give some advice to someone there?
Yeah, my quick answer would be grab a copy of that self-assessment checklist.
Yeah.
Ask them to fill it in and you fill it in yourself or the senior manager, and then sit down and have a frank and open conversation about where the differences might lie.
Yeah. I guarantee you'll probably find them. I was chatting with one of the women who's on our current cohort and getting some feedback from her, and she said, "Oh, I was a bit sort of unsure about why I was coming because I've, been a manager for a while and I thought I knew it all. And the reality is that it turns out I'm getting so much value out of the program that I just realized I didn't know it all." So I think that there's something really valuable also in having a bit of a chat about, well, what have you got to lose? Like this is an opportunity for some development. You'll always learn something. And the really good thing about our program, as I said before, is that it's a peer program. You're learning with people that you get to know, and you're learning from them as well, not just, the experience that our team at Howardco have, but you're learning from these other businesses and things like that. So
Yeah, I agree with that, Lauren. I mean, it is a lot of the learning does take place within the virtual room, and sometimes for the person who's questioning, well, why do I need to do this? This is really the real turning point where they go, oh, hang on, there's somebody over there who's facing similar challenges to me. They've got something to learn. I can learn
yeah,
from them.
yeah. And so if you've got any other questions that crop up, please obviously just reach out to us. But that was all the questions that we had that came in the chat, Warren. So
Wonderful, Lauren. Thank you, and thank you for the questions to the two, Caitlin and Rod. All right. So if today highlighted a capability gap, the next step is a conversation, not a commitment. We love to chat. If you want to learn more about the program, be in touch. If you want to register, if you think that's all you need to know, jump on board, go to that QR code. You can register. There it is again. Again, a reminder about the end of financial year discount as well.
yeah, that's right up until the 30th of June. But if you do want to make sure that you secure your spot,
Jump in before the next person does. A big thank you. And just to close, one final thought. I think that, we started out talking about uncertainty and the important role that managers play. I think the businesses that will navigate uncertainty best are not the ones who are the biggest or the smartest, but it's the ones who have invested in their managers who can then develop those capabilities that we've seen today, close the gaps, and be able to support you as a business owner or as a leader in being able to drive your business strongly and confidently through, these challenging times we have right now. We will come out the other side, and hopefully everyone will be better for it. But you have to invest in your people to do that. Lauren, thank you.
thank you,
Great
Warren. Yeah.
sharing the session with you again. And to everyone, thanks for joining us. We look forward to seeing you on our next webinar, and be in touch if you'd like to know more. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.